Today, right here and right now, I was graciously given the space to talk to you. And I wanted to say something meaningful and interesting and insightful. I thought a lot about what I wanted to say. And I actually realized I hadn't spoken about myself. Instead, I often lean on academic topics when I give talks. I guess that's what humanities does to you. Instead, today, I've decided to tell a story. When I was 13, I had a moment of panic. And in retrospect, I know a lot of it was teenage angst, but in the moment, it felt soul-crushing, like everything does when you're 13. In this moment, I realized that everyone around me seemed to be good at something. He was good at hockey, she was good at math, she was good at riddles, and he was good at history. Not only did I feel that they had something they were good at, but I felt there was a measure to their success. People who were good at sports got medals, and people who were good at math took University of Waterloo tests to prove how smart they were. After this realization, I tried to find my thing, the thing I was good at. For some reason, I frankly can't tell you why this is the case, I decided the thing I wanted to be good at was science fairs. So I started to do science fairs. One year, I did a study on vitamin C's effects on people's energy levels. I dressed up as one big orange. Yes, there is one photo, and no, you cannot see it. 1 year later, I decided to test the cleanliness of the Ottawa River. And you don't want to know the results of that. And every year, I would commit to this extracurricular project. Most of my friends didn't know about it, and they didn't understand why I would choose to do more work. None of my teachers knew about my involvement, let alone encouraged it. I used to make those trifold posters every year with my hypothesis and materials and procedures. And every year, for 3 years in a row, I would go home empty. I would spend the whole day, at Carleton University, at the regional science fair. I would present to 3 judges, and I would go home with no recognition. I felt disheartened. This was going to be the one thing that I was good at. Nothing was happening for me. What I hadn't realized is that the science fairs weren't the thing for me. I wasn't succeeding because I was a failure or because I was bad at everything. I wasn't doing well because I was simply not passionate about science fairs. A year after that devastating heartbreak, I was at summer camp where we have a talent show. We didn't have much time to prepare, but we were told we can perform or do anything on stage. I had this gnawing idea, at the back of my mind, that I should recite some of the poetry that I used to write on my phone. I had been writing little excerpts of poetry, little ideas, thoughts on my phone, and I never thought of them as interesting or insightful or profound. Regardless, I knew that I wanted to participate in this talent show. So I got up with my phone, and in front of my camp, I recited that poetry. I do not remember what I said or even how I said it, but what I do remember is when I was up there, I felt connected to everyone in the room. I felt this connection in a way I never had felt before. I could make eye contact with someone in the audience, and even someone I didn't know that well, and I felt understood, and I felt like on some level, I understood them too. I ended up winning that talent show, and the prize was to perform at an artistic showcase held here at Carleton University. A few months later, I performed 2 pieces of poetry at that showcase, where I met many performers based in Ottawa. I started to compete in performance poetry, and I began to develop this network and community of artists. I started to win poetry competitions and be asked to perform at events. I say these things not in a self-congratulatory way, but to perhaps show you that unexpectedly, I ended up doing something that I loved. I didn't choose to be passionate about poetry. In some way, it chose me, and then I chose to love it back. I don't tell this story without my own agenda. I told this story because poetry taught me something profound about how we live our lives. Poetry gave me a space to express myself, to tell my stories. The poetry community in Ottawa opened their arms to me and gave me a platform. I think when we build our world, we tell stories. We mark so many of our milestones in our lives with words, with whispered words, angry words, words of wisdoms, and most remarkably, with silence. Stories are the love letters of widows and the epitaph of mothers. I think stories are the way we extend a hand out into the world and hope and pray that there'll be a hand reaching right back. When we tell stories, we hope for a recognition of our existence. We are asserting our existence in this world. So when we eulogize, we tell stories about a person, sort of to say their story will go on. I will share with you a piece of Sarah Kay's poem, The Paradox, one of my favorites, where she says, "When I am inside writing, all I can think about is how I should be outside living. And when I am outside living, all I can do is notice all there is to write about. When I read about love, I think I should be out there loving. And when I love, I think I need to read more." I think Kay is trying to say that there is a reciprocity between lived experience and narrative. Through narrative, we build the world we occupy, and after we occupy it, we turn to narrative to reflect. Especially as a young Muslim woman who wears the hijab, I knew that I needed to take up space. I began to realize that if I don't tell my stories, if I don't make space for myself, if I didn't accept spaces to tell my story and share those parts of me, that chair, that podium, that microphone will not just remain empty. Someone else will occupy that space. Someone else might be telling our stories. Or worse, people would start filling it with silence and replace the stories of who I am with their own versions. So, I will leave you with the ending of Sarah Kay's poem, where she says, "When the last breath comes, at least I will know I was thankful for all the places I was so sure I was not supposed to be. All the places I made it to, all the loves I held, all the words I wrote, and even for just one moment, I will be exactly where I am supposed to be."